The city outside was alive with lights, but inside the penthouse, silence weighed heavier than marble walls. Aariz Khan slipped his key into the lock and pushed the door open. He had spent the entire day at his office, closing deals, smiling through fatigue, and counting the hours until he could return to the woman he loved. At least, that was the illusion he had been living with for months. The apartment smelled faintly of Elena's perfume, sweet jasmine, mixed with something sharp, something almost metallic. She wasn't waiting at the door like she used to. There was a time when she'd run into his arms, teasing him for being late, her laughter filling every corner of their world. Tonight, her absence from the hallway already told him something was wrong. "Elena," he called softly, setting his briefcase aside. She was in the living room, sitting on the cream leather couch like a queen waiting for a subject, not a wife waiting for her husband. Her posture was perfect, her black dress elegant, her hair styled as if she had stepped out of a corporate magazine shoot, and her eyes, those eyes that once lit up at the sight of him, were distant, cold, unreadable. Ariz's chest tightened. "You're still awake," he tried, forcing a smile. "I thought you'd be asleep by now." Her lips curved, but it wasn't a smile. "We need to talk." The 4 words no husband ever wants to hear. Aariz swallowed, feeling his pulse quicken. "All right, what is it?" She didn't hesitate. That hurt the most. No pause, no flicker of guilt, just a sharp, clean cut. "I can't do this anymore. I want a divorce." The words hit him like glass shattering inside his ribs. For a second, he thought he had misheard. He almost laughed, expecting her to smirk and say she was joking. But Elena's face was carved in stone. "A divorce?" Aariz whispered. "Yes." She folded her hands neatly on her lap, like she was closing a business deal. "My heart belongs to someone else. It always did. Adrian is back in my life." Adrian. The name crashed against his ears like thunder. He had heard it before once, long ago, in the early days of their marriage. Elena had spoken of him as a chapter closed, a college love, intense but short-lived. Aariz had trusted her, believed her, when she said the past had no hold over her future. And now, here it was. "Elena," he said, trying to steady his voice, "we built a life together, a marriage. Do those vows mean nothing to you?" For the first time, her gaze faltered. Just a flicker, but then she looked away, toward the city skyline glittering beyond the glass walls. "I thought they did. I thought I could forget him. But when Adrian came back, everything changed. I realized I've been lying to myself and to you." Aariz felt his throat tighten. Memories rushed in, her laughter on their wedding day, the warmth of her hand in his, the way she once whispered forever against his lips. Now those memories mocked him. "So that's it." His voice was quiet, almost eerily calm. "You're throwing everything away for a man who left you once." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't about throwing anything away. It's about following my heart." Aariz laughed bitterly. "Your heart?" He stood, running a hand through his hair, his control fraying. "What about my heart, Elena? Does it count for nothing?" Her silence was his answer. He wanted to rage, to break something, to demand why she would betray him like this after everything he had given her. But instead, dignity wrapped around his grief like armor. His father once told him, "When love betrays you, don't beg, don't break, stand tall, and let the world see your silence louder than your pain." Aariz exhaled slowly. "If freedom is what you want, then you'll have it. I won't stand in your way." "But Elena," his eyes burned into hers, "don't ever expect me to wait at the ruins of what we built. You can't burn a man's home and still ask him to stand in the ashes." For the first time that night, her composure cracked. A shadow of guilt flickered in her eyes, but she said nothing. She rose, heels clicking against the marble floor, and disappeared into the master bedroom, leaving him alone in the vast emptiness of the living room. Aariz walked to the window. The city glittered like a million stars mocking him. He pressed a hand against the glass, the cold seeping into his skin. His marriage was over, his heart broken, but his soul whispered a single vow, sharper than steel. She will regret this. One day, she will learn the price of her return. The courthouse smelled of polished wood and cold justice. The tall pillars, the heavy silence, and the weight of finality pressed down on Aariz's shoulders as he sat at the long table, facing the woman who had once been his entire world. Elena Malik, CEO, brilliant, untouchable, the woman who once whispered forever into his ear now sat across from him like a stranger. She didn't even look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the documents in front of her, as though marriage was just another contract to be signed and discarded. The judge's voice echoed, Mr. Aariz Khan. Mrs. Elena Malik, today, you finalized the dissolution of your marriage. Are both parties in agreement? Ariz's lawyer nudged him, but he was already nodding. His lips pressed into a thin line. Agreement, yes. Agreement to the destruction of his vase. Agreement to the tearing apart of his soul. He glanced at Elena. She didn't falter. She simply signed the papers, her manicured hand gliding smoothly, like she had been rehearsing this moment. She was dressed immaculately: white blouse, charcoal blazer, diamond earrings. Cold perfection. Nothing about her spoke of the woman who once danced barefoot in their living room, laughing when he spun her around. When it was his turn, Aariz lifted the pen. His hand trembled slightly, but not out of weakness, out of the sheer weight of what this moment meant. Every stroke of ink was a funeral bell for the love he once believed indestructible. His lawyer whispered, "She's agreed to the settlement. You'll walk away with a considerable amount. You could contest, but..." "No," Aariz interrupted quietly, his eyes fixed on Elena. "Let her have what she wants. Money is not the price of my soul. Just finish it." The words were final. With one last stroke, he ended their marriage. Silence filled the courtroom, broken only by the shuffle of papers. The judge declared it done. Just like that, love reduced to signatures, promises reduced to ashes. Outside the courthouse, the world outside was noisy, bustling with people who had no idea his life had just collapsed. Reporters, drawn by Elena's reputation as a high-profile CEO, swarmed near the steps. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed forward. "Ms. Malik, is it true you're reuniting with Adrian Rose?" "Elena, was infidelity the reason for this divorce?" "Elena, how does this affect your company's image?" She stood gracefully, answering with polished statements, her PR mask firmly in place. "This is a private matter. Adrian is an important part of my personal life, but my career remains my focus." Every word was another dagger twisting in Ariz's chest. She had already moved on. She wasn't his wife anymore, she was Adrian's future. Someone tried to push a microphone toward Aariz. "Mr. Khan, do you have any comment? Did you agree to this settlement willingly?" He stared at the reporter, then at Elena, then back at the flashing cameras. And he smiled, a slow, calm, devastating smile. "Yes," he said clearly, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "I agreed, because some things aren't worth fighting for when the heart is already gone." With that, he walked down the steps, ignoring the chaos behind him. That night, back in his now half-empty apartment, Aariz poured himself a glass of water. The silence was deafening. The walls felt too large, the furniture too cold. Her presence had vanished, leaving only echoes. He sat by the window, staring out at the city lights, the glass still in his hand. He had money now. Generous settlement, Elena insisted on, perhaps out of guilt. But what was money compared to the hollow ache inside him? As the hours passed, memories invaded him again. Elena in her wedding dress. Elena falling asleep on his chest after long nights. Elena's soft whispers of "I love you." And then, the last image, the way she had walked out of court today, head held high, without a backward glance. Aariz clenched his fist. If love could be discarded so easily, then he would discard the pain as well. He would take the money, take his broken heart, and vanish. Somewhere she couldn't find him. Somewhere he could breathe again. The city outside was alive, but Aariz Khan was already planning his disappearance. The airplane hummed steadily as it cut through the night sky, leaving behind the glittering city that had once been his home. Aariz sat by the window, his reflection staring back at him, tired and worn. In his lap rested a leather bag, documents, new accounts, cash transfers. The money was real. Freedom was real. Yet inside, the shadows of betrayal clung to him like chains. He hadn't told anyone where he was going. Not his colleagues, not his friends, if any of them could still be called friends. Elena had taken most of their shared social circle with her. People naturally orbit power, and she had it in abundance. Aariz chose exile. The stewardess offered him a drink, but he shook his head, his throat already burned with unshed words. Instead, he closed his eyes and let the memories haunt him. Elena's confession, the courtroom, the cameras. He wondered if Adrian was holding her now, whispering promises of a rekindled love. The thought stabbed deep, but Aariz reminded himself, he was done being a fool. Arrival in a new world. When the plane landed, dawn was breaking over Istanbul. The city unfolded like a painting, mosque silhouetted against a golden sky, the Bosphorus shimmering with light. Aariz chose Istanbul deliberately. It was foreign enough to hide in, yet familiar in culture, a city where one could disappear among millions. He rented a modest apartment overlooking narrow streets filled with bazaars and voices. Unlike the sterile silence of his penthouse, this place breathed life, children laughing, vendors calling, seagulls crying overhead. For the first time in weeks, Aariz inhaled without feeling suffocated. He spent days walking the city, trying to lose himself in its rhythm. He visited the spice market, where colors dazzled his senses, and the quiet courtyards of mosques, where prayer whispered peace. At night, he wrote in a journal lines that were half confessions, half wounds. She chose her past. I must build my future. Why does my heart still beat in her absence? A chance encounter. One evening, in a small cafe by the water, Aariz met Layla, a local painter. She was sketching the Galata Tower in her notebook, strands of dark hair falling into her face. Something about her caught his attention, not beauty alone, but the quiet focus in her eyes. She noticed his stare and smiled politely. You're not from here. Aariz hesitated, then replied, No, I'm just passing through. Running or searching? She asked, her voice curious, not judgmental. The question startled him. Maybe both, he admitted. Layla chuckled softly. Aren't we all? She returned to her sketching, leaving him with the strange feeling that she had seen through him in seconds. That night, Aariz lay awake, thinking of her words. Running or searching? Perhaps he was doing both. Running from Elena's shadow, searching for himself. The shadow's return. But freedom was never complete. One morning, while scrolling through international news online, his heart stopped. There she was, Elena Malik, photographed on the red carpet with Adrian, her hand on his arm, the headline screaming, Power couple, reunited. Elena Malik and Adrian confirm their relationship. The image burned into Aariz's mind. She was smiling the smile that once belonged only to him. He slammed his laptop shut, breath ragged. Even here, thousands of miles away, her shadow had found him. Anger surged, but beneath it lay something worse. Longing. He hated himself for still wanting her, for imagining her turning back, realizing her mistake. That night, as he stood by the Bosphorus, city lights reflecting on the dark water, he whispered into the wind, I left you behind, Elena, don't follow me, don't haunt me, because if you ever return the price will be too high. The morning sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of Aariz's apartment, spilling golden warmth across the small but lively space. He sat at the wooden table near the balcony, sipping Turkish tea from a curved glass cup. Outside, the street was alive, vendors shouting prices, the aroma of fresh bread wafting through the air, children darting between stalls. It was nothing like the sterile silence of his old penthouse. This city breathed, and in its rhythm, Aariz felt himself slowly learning to breathe again. For the first time since the divorce, he realized he hadn't thought of Elena the entire morning. Building a new routine, Aariz began creating a life from scratch. Days spent walking along the Bosphorus, where fishermen cast their lines and tourists snapped photographs. Afternoons tucked away in small libraries and bookshops, reading anything to distract his restless mind. Nights writing in his journal, not just about pain now, but about observations, about the life around him. His journal entries shifted. Day 12. The call to prayer at sunset feels like a heartbeat that the whole city shares. For a moment, I felt less alone. Day 15. Freedom tastes bitter at first, but perhaps it sweetens with time. Layla's presence. Almost every evening, Aariz found himself at the same cafe by the water, the one where he had first met Layla. At first, it was coincidence. Later, it was habit. Layla, with her sketchbook always open, seemed to belong to the city in a way Aariz envied. Her laughter was easy, her words thoughtful. She never pried into his past, never asked for explanations. She only shared fragments of her own life, how she painted to preserve fleeting moments, how she believed every person carried colors within them. One evening, as she sketched the glow of lanterns reflecting on the water, she asked, So, Aariz, what color are you today? He frowned, caught off guard. Color? Yes, she smiled, eyes sparkling with mischief. Everyone has one. Blue for calm, red for passion, gray for grief, gold for hope. What's yours? Aariz stared at the horizon, where the sun was sinking into the Bosphorus. After a long silence, he whispered, Gray, with maybe a thread of gold. Layla's smile softened. That's a good start. Gray means you're honest about your pain. Gold means you still believe in light. For the first time in months, Aariz felt something stir in his chest. Not love, not yet, but the faint taste of freedom from Elena's shadow. Temptation to heal. Days with Layla became longer. She dragged him to hidden galleries, to street markets where artists sold handmade crafts. She showed him places tourists never found. Quiet Gardens tucked behind old stone walls. Rooftops where the whole city seemed to stretch forever. In her presence, Aariz laughed. Not the forced, polite laugh he used with Elena's business associates, but genuine laughter that surprised even him. But at night, when he returned to his apartment, the shadows whispered again. He would see Elena's face in the news, headlines about her and Adrian's power couple status. He would hear her voice in memory, promising forever. And the ache returned, heavy and merciless. Still, each morning, Layla's words echoed, gray with a thread of gold, foreshadowing of the storm. One evening, as Aariz walked Layla home through narrow streets lit with lanterns, she paused at her doorway. "You carry a story inside you," she said softly. "One day, it will demand to be told. And when it does, you'll have to decide whether to end it or begin a new one." Aariz met her gaze. Something in her eyes unsettled him, not attraction alone, but truth, the kind he wasn't ready to face. He nodded slowly. "Maybe, but not today." She smiled, touched his arm, and disappeared inside. Aariz stood alone in the street, the city alive around him, his heart caught between freedom and the chains of memory. He didn't know it yet, but fate was already moving pieces he couldn't see. And the taste of freedom he had just begun to savor would soon be tested by the return of everything he thought he had left behind. The cafe was unusually crowded that evening. Tourists bustled in and out, the aroma of roasted coffee beans clinging to the air. Aariz sat at his usual corner table, his journal open but untouched. His mind wasn't here, it was on the headline he had seen that morning. Elena Malik and Adrian Rose launch joint venture. The power couple rising. The photo haunted him. Elena, glowing in a silk gown, Adrian's arm around her waist, his smile sharp and practiced. Aariz had tried to ignore it, to push the image away, but the ache in his chest refused to fade. When Layla arrived, sketchbook in hand, she immediately noticed his distracted stare. "You've been somewhere else all day," she said, settling across from him. Aariz closed the journal. "Somewhere I shouldn't be." She tilted her head. "Still running from your shadows," he sighed. "They run faster than I do." A stranger's warning. Later that night, as he walked home through the narrow alleys, Ovo stopped him. "You're Aariz Khan, aren't you?" Aariz turned sharply. A man stepped from the shadows, a foreigner, older, with weary eyes and an accent that hinted at America. He wore a worn leather jacket, his face half hidden under a cap. "I don't know you," Aariz replied cautiously. "You don't," the man admitted, "but I know Adrian Rose, and if Elena Malik has gone back to him, she's in danger." Aariz froze. "Danger? What are you talking about?" The man stepped closer. "Adrian isn't who he pretends to be. He's charming. Yes. Wealthy. Yes. But behind that mask is debt, betrayal, and blood. He's ruined people before. He'll ruin her too." Aariz's breath caught. He wanted to dismiss the man, to call it nonsense, but something in his eyes was raw and real. "Why are you telling me this?" Aariz demanded. "Because you're the only one who loved her enough to fight for her," the man said quietly. "And when Adrian burns her life to the ground, she come crawling back to you." But by then, he shook his head. "By then, the price will be higher than you can imagine." Before Aariz could respond, the man disappeared into the maze of streets, swallowed by the night. Aariz's turmoil. Back in his apartment, Aariz paced restlessly. Could it be true? Adrian, dangerous. Elena wasn't foolish, ambitious, yes, but not naive. Why would she tie herself to a man who might destroy her? He remembered her face at the courthouse, cold, determined, almost desperate. Could desperation have blinded her? He sat at the table, head in his hands. For months, he had prayed she would regret leaving him. If Adrian harms her, do I even want to save her? The question cut deep. He wanted to believe he had moved on, that Layla's presence was enough. But Elena's shadow still lived inside him, and the thought of her breaking under Adrian's lies twisted his heart, foreshadowing of the return. The next day, Aariz met Layla at the cafe again. He didn't tell her about the stranger or Adrian's secret, but when she asked him to describe his color again, he answered differently. "Black," he said quietly. Layla frowned. "Black? That's not grief. That's a storm." He nodded. "Exactly." She touched his hand gently. "Storms always break. The question is when they do. Will you be ready for the light?" Her words lingered in his mind long after she left. A storm was coming. He could feel it. And when it broke, Elena would no longer be just a shadow haunting him. She would be real, standing in front of him again, demanding something he wasn't sure he could give. Rain fell heavy that night. Lahar's streets gleamed under flickering street lamps, each draught echoing against the silent glass of Ariz's window. He sat in the dark, staring at an old box he had avoided for years. Inside lay everything he had promised himself to forget: photographs, letters, little fragments of a life that once defined him. And at the center of it all, a single photograph of her, Elena, smiling in the sunlight, her hand wrapped in his as if she belonged nowhere else. He tried to look away. He couldn't. The letters. His trembling hands reached for the bundle of letters. They were hers, written during those months when their love was unstoppable, when promises flowed as easily as breath. He read one, his throat tightening. "You're the only person who makes me believe the world can be kind. Aariz, don't ever leave me. I wouldn't survive it." The irony was unbearable. She had been the one to leave. She had survived. But had he? He pressed the letter to his forehead, the ache spreading through him like fire. Layla's intuition. The next morning, Layla arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. Aariz was already there, hollow-eyed, his journal filled with dark, restless sketches. She studied him carefully, her artist's eye catching what words couldn't say. "You opened the wound," she said softly. Aariz froze. "What do you mean?" "You've been carrying it like a hidden scar, but now it's bleeding again. I can see it in your face." He wanted to deny it, but the truth weighed too heavily. Instead, he asked, "What do you do when a scar refuses to heal?" Layla tilted her head, thinking. "You stop pretending it isn't there. You let it breathe. You let someone else see it." Her gaze lingered on him, gentle but unflinching. Aariz looked away. He couldn't let her see the truth, not yet. The glimpse of Elena. That evening, fate struck. Aariz was walking through the bustling heart of the city when he saw her. Elena. She stood across the street, wrapped in an elegant coat, her hair loose in the wind. She wasn't alone. Adrian was beside her, whispering something in her ear. But her face wasn't the radiant mask from the newspapers. Up close, Aariz saw the faint shadow of unease in her eyes. Their gazes met across the crowd. For a moment, time folded in on itself. The years, the distance, the betrayal, none of it existed. It was just him and her, caught in the gravity of a love neither could escape. But before he could move, Adrian's hand tightened on her arm, pulling her away into a waiting car. Aariz stood frozen, rain dripping from the edge of his coat, his heart pounding with a truth he had feared all along. Elena wasn't gone. She was here. And she wasn't happy. The breaking point. Back in his apartment, Aariz finally allowed himself to say the words he had buried for years. "I never healed." The wound of her departure had never closed. Layla's kindness couldn't stitch it. His silence couldn't numb it. And now, with her return, it was raw again, bleeding, burning, demanding to be felt. He whispered into the night, his voice breaking. "Elena, why did you come back?" The city was alive with no's, but Aariz only heard the echo of her name. For nights, he replayed that fleeting moment, her face in the crowd, the silent cry in her eyes. He knew it wasn't a dream. Elena was back, and fate, merciless as ever, didn't wait long to prove it. The unexpected encounter. It was at a charity gala Layla had convinced him to attend. Aariz wore a black suit, his presence striking yet withdrawn, blending with the city's elite. The hall was filled with glittering chandeliers, clinking glasses, and shallow laughter. He had just turned to leave when the air shifted. She entered. Elena Malik, still radiant, still powerful, but there was something different now, something fragile hidden beneath her poised elegance. Adrian walked beside her, the perfect businessman's smile masking his restless energy. And then their eyes met. The room disappeared. The years, the silence, the divorce papers, everything burned away in that instant. For the first time in forever, they were no longer ghosts haunting each other. They were flesh, breath, and unresolved fire. The first words. She approached, her heels striking the marble like gunshots. Aariz stood still, every muscle tense, refusing to flinch. "Aariz." Her voice was low, almost trembling, though she hid it beneath a practiced smile. "Elena." His tone was calm, but his eyes carried storms. Adrian stepped forward with forced cheer. "What a surprise. The famous Aariz Khan. I've heard so much about you." Ariz's jaw tightened. "I'm sure you have." It wasn't Adrian's voice that mattered. It was hers. The silence between them screamed louder than the orchestra playing in the background. The accusations. Later, when the crowd thinned, Elena found him alone near the balcony. The city lights painted his face in shadows. "You weren't supposed to be here," she said softly. He turned, his expression unreadable. "Neither were you. At least, not in my world anymore." Her breath caught. "Aariz, He cut her off, his voice sharp. Don't you dare try to explain." After years of silence, After tearing my life apart for a man who clearly isn't enough to make you happy." Her eyes widened, pain flashing across them. "You think I didn't suffer? You think it was easy?" A bitter laugh escaped him. "Easy? You destroyed us in one night. And for what? To chase a ghost from your past." The silence that followed was suffocating. She reached for words, but none came. The cracks in her armor. For the first time, Elena's mask slipped. Her eyes glistened. "I made mistakes, Aariz. I thought I knew what I wanted. But the truth is," she stopped herself, biting her lip, as if caging the confession inside. He studied her, torn between fury and longing. His voice broke despite himself. "You shattered me, Elena. And now, standing here, you expect me to believe you regret it?" Her hand trembled at her side. "I don't expect you to believe anything, but I had to see you, to know if." She never finished the sentence, because Adrian appeared, his arm sliding around her waist, possessive and cold. "Ready to go?" Her lips parted, her eyes still locked on Aariz's, but she nodded. And just like that, she was gone again, dragged back into a world she no longer seemed to fit in. The night after the gala, neither of them slept. Aariz sat by his window, staring at the endless skyline, replaying Elena's trembling voice, the crack in her perfect mask. He hated her for leaving, but he hated himself more for still feeling the pull of her presence. Across the city, Elena lay in her luxury suite beside Adrian, who had already drifted into shallow sleep. Her eyes stayed open, fixed on the ceiling. The image of Aariz, his anger, his hurt, his dignity burned in her mind. It wasn't supposed to be this way. Seeing him again was supposed to be easy. It wasn't. Adrian's shadow. The next morning, Adrian's facade began to slip. "You saw the way he looked at you," Adrian said sharply over breakfast. "Don't pretend it didn't matter." Elena's fork stilled. "What are you talking about? You still want him?" His voice was cold, possessive. "But remember, Elena, you chose me. You can't run back now." Her lips tightened. She wanted to scream, to deny, to escape. But deep down, his words pierced her truth. She did still want Aariz, not with reason, but with the force of memory and love that had never fully died. Aariz and Layla. Meanwhile, Aariz found Layla waiting at the cafe. She was the only one who could read his silence. "You saw her again," she said simply. He didn't reply. "She's the storm you've been hiding from, isn't she?" Layla's voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed a hint of hurt. Aariz finally spoke. "She's everything I lost, and everything I swore I'd never need again." Layla's hand brushed his, a quiet offering of comfort. "Then maybe it's time you decide whether you're fighting to forget her, or fighting because you still love her." Her words cut deep. Aariz didn't answer. He couldn't. The chance encounter. Days later, fate refused to give them peace. Aariz and Elena crossed paths again, this time without Adrian. It was in a quiet bookstore tucked into a hidden street, a place Elena used to love. Aariz froze when he saw her, standing there with a book clutched against her chest. She looked almost ordinary, stripped of her CEO armor. Their eyes locked. No one else was there, just them, and the silence they could no longer hide behind. "Aariz," her voice cracked. He stayed silent, waiting. "I shouldn't have come back, but I couldn't stay away either." His chest tightened, anger and longing colliding. "Why? To tear open the wounds again? To remind me what I lost?" Tears shimmered in her eyes. "No. To remind myself what I threw away." The almost confession. For a moment, she stepped closer, her hand trembling as if it wanted to reach for him. "I was wrong, Aariz, about everything. Adrian, he isn't who I thought he was. But you." Before she could finish, her phone buzzed. Adrian's name flashed across the screen. The spell shattered. She froze, then stepped back, her walls rebuilding in an instant. "I should go." And she left, leaving Aariz with nothing but unfinished words and a heart that refused to let go. The world saw Adrian as a man of power, charm, and influence, but behind the glimmering mask, the cracks were widening, and Elena was finally beginning to see them. The mask slips. Late one evening, Elena walked into Adrian's study to find him shouting into his phone. His voice was sharp, threatening. "I don't care what it takes, bury the reports. No one needs to know where the money went." He didn't notice her at first, but when he did, his face hardened. "You shouldn't be here." Elena frowned. "What money? What are you hiding, Adrian?" His eyes flashed. "Business. Nothing for you to worry about." But she wasn't convinced. Something in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. She remembered Aariz's words at the gala. The accusation that she had destroyed everything for a ghost. Was Adrian that ghost a dream that never existed? Elena's doubt. That night, she lay awake, Adrian asleep beside her. Memories of Aariz flooded her, his honesty, his quiet strength, the way he never hid from her. In Ariz's world, there had been pain, but never lies. Her chest tightened. She whispered to the dark, "What have I done?" The rumors. The next day, whispers began to circulate in the city's business circles. Adrian's empire wasn't as stable as it appeared. Fraud, debt, shady dealings with dangerous people. Elena heard it at a board meeting. A colleague leaned close, voice low. "Careful, Elena. If Adrian goes down, he'll drag everyone with him, including you." The words struck like ice. For years, she had believed Adrian represented security, power, passion. But now, standing at the edge of his collapsing empire, all she saw was quicksand. Ariz's resolve. Meanwhile, Aariz received an unexpected call from an old acquaintance in finance. "Aariz, you won't believe this. Adrian Malik's empire is rotten. And if you wanted revenge, well, this is your chance." Aariz hung up, torn. Part of him wanted to let Adrian burn on his own. Another part wanted to fight not for revenge, but for closure, for justice, for the dignity Elena had stripped from him. For the first time, he began to prepare not as the man broken by love, but as the man reborn by pain. The confrontation at home. That evening, Elena confronted Adrian directly. "You lied to me," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Adrian smirked, sipping his whiskey. "I protected you. You don't have the stomach for the real world, Elena. That's why you need me." Her hand curled into a fist. "No, I don't need you, not anymore." His smile faded. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Careful, Elena. You think you can walk away now, after everything I've given you?" She held his gaze, her heart pounding. For the first time since she left Aariz, she felt real fear. The storm that had been brewing finally broke. Adrian's collapse. The news exploded like wildfire. Reports of fraud, hidden debts, and criminal partnerships spread through the business world. Adrian Malik, the man once untouchable, was now cornered. Board members resigned. Investors pulled out. His empire crumbled overnight. Elena stood in the boardroom as chaos unfolded around her. She watched Adrian rage, threatening everyone, his charm replaced by desperation. For the first time, she saw him not as the man she had chosen, but as the prison she had built for herself. Elena's breaking point. That night, she packed a single suitcase. Her hands trembled as she looked around the penthouse, once a dream, now a cage. She whispered into the empty room, "I traded love for power, and now, I have neither." Her heart pulled her in one direction only, toward Aariz. The return. She found him at his apartment, standing by the same window where he had once promised himself never to break again. When he opened the door, silence stretched between them. Rain poured outside, just like the night she had left. "Aariz," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I was wrong. About everything, Adrian. He was a mistake. You were the truth I was too blind to see. I don't want his world. I just want us." Her tears fell freely now. She stepped closer, trembling. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but if there's even a piece of your heart that still remembers me, I'm here. I'm ready to pay the price of my return." Aariz chose. For a long moment, Aariz said nothing. His face was unreadable, his silence heavier than her words. Finally, he spoke, his voice calm but unyielding. "You shattered me, Elena. You left me with nothing but ashes. And now you stand here asking me to burn again." She flinched, but didn't look away. "Then tell me it's too late. Tell me you don't love me anymore, and I'll go." Ariz's chest tightened. He wanted to shut the door, to end the story right there. But his heart betrayed him, because even through the pain, even through the years, he still loved her. He stepped closer, lifting her chin so her eyes met his. "The price of your return, Elena, is truth. No more lies, no more ghosts. If you want me, it has to be real this time." Her lips trembled, but she nodded, her tears shining like diamonds. "It's real. It always was. I was just too blind to see." The final embrace. Aariz let out a long breath, the weight of years finally lifting. Slowly, he pulled her into his arms. For the first time in so long, the storm inside him calmed. Elena clung to him, sobbing softly. "I'm home." And those scars remained, and the future was uncertain. Aariz held her with a quiet strength, whispering the words that ended their war. "Then don't ever leave again."